Okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of a next gen strategy tip. If you're going to be on any of these reality shows, either be Survivor, Big Brother, even The Bachelorette or Bachelor to some extent, I would highly recommend wearing one of these shirts right here. I'm not sure what it says. I know what it says. It's the I don't know how to read shirt. Just constantly reminding people that you're a complete idiot is never a bad idea in these shows. And welcome. As you know, my name is David Shire. I'm a big fan of these reality TV shows, and today we're going to be reviewing the Thursday night episode of Big Brother. Sorry I'm a little bit later on this, had to deal with some personal family drama, but not even going to go into that. Let's just go ahead and jump into this episode. Now, overall, my takeaway from this episode was there wasn't a lot of new information that we kind of learned. It was pretty straightforward vote, minus 2 votes that we'll talk about a little bit here. With our future knowledge of what happened on the live feeds and why certain people did certain things. I'm looking at you, Tiffany. And we're going to go ahead and break down some of these other things that we learned from the DRs, who's really in control of the house and what the status of the house structure is. And so let's just go ahead and jump into this. So firstly, I want to mention that the edit currently is trying to bury Frenchie, but it doesn't really seem like it's doing that great of a job burying Frenchie. Frenchie kind of has this weird problem in the house where he says that he wants to go after the meatheads. He says he wants to go after like these jocks, right? And he is being super hypocritical about it. And it's even worse on the feeds. One of the conversations that Frenchie had was with Xavier. I would recommend you watching that and seeing how you feel about that. Basically, Xavier told Frenchie to kind of chill out and try to calm down during his HOH week. And Frenchie responded in a very not great way, saying like, well, are you threatening me? And it just kind of turned into this weird conversation that the both of them had. And Frenchie, kind of moving forward in this week, said that he was continually felt like Xavier could be a threat down the line, which is kind of weird. And there's just a lot of hypocrisy in Frenchie's game, like that I'm just going to call out right now. It seems that he is very much a heroic figure in his own eyes. And while it makes sense, you know, you always want to be the hero of your story, I think it is important to kind of bring this up that, you know, you can appear to be quote unquote woke, but if you don't like actually go through with what you're saying you're going to go through with, I mean, that's pretty terrible. I mean, that's what Tyler did last season with the whole Bailey and Davon situation. And it's just, it's kind of uncomfortable. But overall, Frenchie, despite all this, I think Frenchie's HOH, his week 1 HOH, is going to be remembered very fondly in Big Brother history, especially with what's currently happening in the live feeds. So we'll see how that kind of continues to go. But again, we're going back to this show. So a lot of really funny segments, especially a lot of good stuff from Tiffany here. They do the French segment that Frenchie's nickname shortened down is a great word to use instead of in place of the F word. So what the French is going on in this house. I can't believe, are you Frenchin kidding me? Just like all these things that Tiffany and the girls are saying is really fun, or the women are saying is just really fun. It was a really great segment, again, to show Tiffany and kind of her more comedic chops. And I think that's kind of a good thing to do in the house if you want to kind of subtly villainize somebody in the house, you know, doing things like this, like making fun of their name and using it in place of like bad words. I think is a good strategy that I think Tiffany has kind of implemented, and she's just doing a lot of really subtle things really well. I think that Tiffany right now is on track to potentially make a good run at winning this game, and she would be kind of, if I had to place money on it, she would be my winner pick right now. Obviously things could go horribly awry for her, but we'll see as we kind of continue going on. All right, let's see. So another segment that was kind of important was that Frenchie was also a big part of, we see the French Kisses alliance being formed in this episode. And it's really, again, very fun segment. Frenchie saying that he wants to form an all-women's alliance with him being the one man in it. And just the audacity of Frenchie in this moment, trying to like make Big Brother history, making a woman's alliance, being the only man and being in charge of it, calling it the French Kisses, is just so ridiculous. And the fact that every single woman, Claire, Aza, Tiffany, calling him out on it, calling him out on how ridiculous the whole thing is. And it's just a really great thing to see on the show. It's good to see that Claire, Tiffany, and Ozza are working really well together and are continuing to move the way throughout the house. We'll see as we kind of go on deeper in these weeks how well they're able to stick together, if there really are like a core group of people. Obviously, with Tiffany and Ozza being in the cookout, we'll see kind of how Claire fits into that later on in the season. But overall, this was a very fun segment, and it was something that I really enjoyed seeing. Also, I just wrote that I love Tiffany's hat. I'm reading these notes a couple of days later, but now that so it took me a second to remember what it was, but it's like that pink Zach Grant's hat that she's wearing and the way she's wearing it. It's just so cool. I love seeing that kind of thing on the show. The fact that Dr. Will wore a hat like that in his first season also is very funny to me, to see that Tiffany really is being a fan of this game and really seeing her show that off. Other segments include Travis cross-dressing and in a striptease in the backyard. And while this moment was fun, it definitely felt more like the thing. It kind of felt weirdly a nail in the coffin, and for Travis in some ways, because this is the kind of thing that editors will put in as like a fun moment for Travis, and probably the thing we remember him most for as the weeks go on and we forget his name, but we'll be like, oh yeah, he was the guy who did the whole cross-dressing tease. Another thing pointed out in RHAP's podcast was the fact that there was no music playing because they are not allowed to play music in the Big Brother house. So while we got the edited version where there's music playing, obviously it was probably a little bit more awkward and weird in the house, which I love to imagine. And so, again, Travis didn't really seem to have that good of a grasp on the game. And the way that he kind of approached Frenchie with his plan near the end, which we saw him kind of giving out the bullet outlines and talking to Frenchie, really kind of showed Travis's inexperience. Travis basically told Frenchie that he was a bigger threat than Frenchie, that if he stayed, he would be a target going into next week and Frenchie wouldn't be. And all these things are kind of good points. He talked about Alyssa having still more of a showmance potential. But then the segment ends, and it was very clear, and I had to look this up afterwards, that Travis didn't really spend as much time as he probably needed to spend with Frenchie in those moments. And what I also thought was kind of interesting is he didn't really reach out to Frenchie with an emotional argument. I think if you really want to work with people and you really want to get them to do what you want them to do, you have to understand their emotional side and you have to understand their logical side. Like, you can present a logical argument, and that's what Travis was doing, right? He said, look, I'm a big threat. I'm a target. Alyssa has potential to be in a showmance with Christian or Xavier, and that could be a problem going down the line. That could be a duo, right? All those things make sense, and it kind of worked a little bit for Brent. It kind of worked a little bit for Frenchie. But what we kind of understand about Frenchie and what we see in his gameplay is that Frenchie is an erratic tornado of a human being. He is definitely more of an emotional player, and Brent in the first couple of days used that to his advantage, whether or not knowing it or not, with his story connecting with Frenchie on that deeper family level. And if Travis was somehow able to bring his argument to Frenchie as more of an emotional thing than he was able to bring it to, maybe he tells Frenchie that, look, I know you're playing for your family. I know that you're a good guy. I know that you really want to take out these jocks, and I know that I'm one of those people. But like, I have a story too, whatever that story is for Travis. And he brought that to the forefront of Frenchie, then made Frenchie feel bad, and then Frenchie, with his overly hero complex, was like, you know what, Travis told me that he was adopted in an orphanage and that his parents were killed, and he saves the night at Gotham City or whatever, and I just can't see myself getting rid of Travis at this point, so I guess I gotta go for Alyssa. That definitely could have worked. I also thought Travis's approach on the feeds was a little bit weak. The fact that he's coming to Frenchie super late in the process. I believe he came to Frenchie on Wednesday night, which leaves like less than 24 hours for Frenchie to even potentially flip the house. So again, you need time to plant those seeds and you need time to water those seeds with people. And the fact that Travis wasn't playing as aggressively to try to get himself off the block, and the fact that he thought that he could just, go in there and charm Frenchie without coming out with an emotional argument for him to stay was a big mistake by him, and it will be interesting. And it's just a good lesson to learn if you're about any of these reality TV shows. It's a good thing to keep in mind. Another thing I noted is that basically after that, it was the live vote. Overall, just very weak arguments in terms of the whole why should we keep you to stay? The whole final argument when Julie Chen asked them, like, okay, present your argument why we should stay. I didn't really understand any of these arguments. Alyssa noted that she had a birthday apparently coming up. Like, great, like that doesn't really affect me in my Big Brother game. There's a ton of shout outs from both of them. I wrote specifically for Alyssa. She shouted out her swimsuit brand or whatever. And it's like, okay, whatever. Like, it wasn't like, anything special. I rated it like a 4 out of 10. And then Travis proceeds his argument. First thing he does is that he takes off his shirt, which, okay, like, I don't know if I would do that if I was like super ripped in the Big Brother house. I don't think it helped his argument whatsoever, but it was certainly something interesting that I've never seen before as an argument to stay in the Big Brother house. In some ways, I thought it would be more threatening because he said that, to Julie afterwards that he felt that he was like, oh yeah, I heard this thing that dumb jocks and stuff would are the first people voted out, and then like his argument is, oh, I'm gonna rip off my shirt and show off my my 8-pack. That's like his argument. I don't understand. Again, a lot of shout outs from Travis. He told a really weird joke about him and his bed sheets, really alluding to spanking the meat. So I can't believe I just said that. I can't believe that he brought this up, and I think Julie was super uncomfortable too. It was just a really wild thing that Travis said, and ultimately he is voted out. And what I'm left with Travis, aka Taylor, if you watch my first episode, is that he'll definitely not be remembered that much for anything. Like, if anything, he'll be probably remembered most for the cross-dressing in this episode, but other than that, he just will kind of fall behind in Big Brother history as like one of those weird first boots. This week will probably go down in Big Brother history as one of the craziest, wildest weeks in the history of Big Brother. It felt like an eternity. I imagine if something like this were to happen again, I would have to I'd have to pull a Loki and go to the end of time and like kill whoever's in charge of the Big Brother thing, just to like try to calm down the situation. But then of course multiple timelines would cut anyway. But it was just absolute insanity. I was exhausted by the end of it. But this week is officially over, and this next week coming up was really interesting. So we have the challenge, and we first get some technical difficulties, which was concerning because we think that I thought that potentially that there was no chance that we'd actually see the HOH, but needless to say, we see the challenge. It is a pool room challenge where contestants have to pick their shot, and they have to pick a number, and whoever picks the highest number and scores with the highest number wins the game. And I heard a lot of interesting arguments about this. The one argument being that like what you want to do is you want to pick the 30. Like, obviously, like it's 1 to 30, you want to pick 30 because it's a guaranteed, if you make your shot, you're going to win the game. And while I do think that's true, I think that it did look like a very difficult shot. I think I probably would have gone somewhere mid-20s and just kind of hope that that nobody else gets a shot in. It is weird though. It's a very difficult puzzle to kind of figure out. The fact that Kyland won was a really big deal. I think that if Brent had kept his number and had won this week, it would have really solidified the slaughterhouse, which we did see form this episode, and which I barely talked about because I don't think it's going to last into next week. I think that certainly portions of it is going to be okay, but with Kyland winning the HOH, it's definitely a weakened structure overall, and so it'll be interesting to see what Kyland does this week with his HOH, because there's some consensus where people were afraid that Kyland will continue with the slaughterhouse, thinking that, oh yeah, somehow I'm all good with these people, and then I will just solidify that, wipe out the other side of the house, and just kind of continue on my day. And then there's the Tiffany side of things, and Tiffany has been pretty outspoken about Frenchie, and Sarah Beth, also underreported on the show at least, is very close to Kyland, and she's also been a little bit more against anti-Frenchie. So there's definitely two warring sides and two warring factions that are going on right now, and it'll be interesting to see how the show kind of displays that moving forward. All right, and that's pretty much it. We see Kyland win. We see that the vote to vote out Travis was an 11-2 vote, with Derek F and Tiffany voting out Alyssa, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the live feeds. Well, actually, we'll just go ahead and talk about it now. The reason why that Derek F voted out Alyssa in this spot was mainly just to cause chaos. We get these like every season where somebody just kind of like throws out a hinky vote, trying to like just be like, hee 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 hee, like, look at me, I just got away with something. And it's kind of annoying, you know, every once in a while it just kind of happens. We saw this with Danielle Donato last season. And the reason why Tiffany, though, however, decided to throw out the vote was because Frenchie asked her to. Because Frenchie had this idea of putting a vote on Alyssa and then blaming Derek X for it. And so ultimately, because of the fact that there was 2 votes to vote out Alyssa instead of just the one, this plan kind of immediately fell flat on its face. People were able to figure out that Big D, Derek F, was the one to do one of the votes. People are still kind of not sure about the Tiffany vote, but nobody really seems to care. And the reason why that Tiffany went through with this is that she's not super close with Frenchie, but she figured that maybe she was talking to the feeds earlier 2 days ago, I believe, where she just kind of mentioned that, you know, like, I did what Frenchie asked, just to kind of cover your bases. She's still not very trusting of Frenchie. She still sees him as a wild card. She still plans on going after Whitney and Brent, but she figured that, you know, if Frenchie's going to ask her to do this thing, if something were to happen, like Brent were to win HOH, might as well do it. Say, like, look, I did what you asked, Frenchie. Like, what do you want from me? Kind of deal. And ultimately, I think it was kind of the right move. There is some risk in it, but I mean, I believe in Tiffany. I believe that she knows what she's doing in this game. So I'm just going to give her the benefit of the doubt until she does something really horrific that we're going to discuss on this channel. All right. So that's basically it for the show portion, just talking strictly about the show Big Brother. And now we're going to go ahead and jump into the live feed portion of the show. If you would, please just like and subscribe. Really helps out the channel. Also start a Patreon so that just to give myself more motivation to make these videos, just to give myself better props and just better production. These Christmas lights, you know, they're not cheap. I mean, they're pretty cheap. The two lights that are reflecting off here are just 2 lamps and stuff like that. I'm just giving away all my production secrets, right? But I would love to do a little bit more with the channel, make it a little bit more professionally. So if you want to get on my Patreon, that would be really awesome. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I'll see you next week. And now we're going to jump into a little bit of the live feed spoilers. So Kyland was very much not into telling people right away what his plans were, because Kyland, I believe, wanted to wait for the wildcard competition to play out. And there's some arguments online. It's like, well, Kyland should like reinforce his alliance with Tiffany, Sarah Beth, Derek X, reassure them and kind of solidify that even more. While also he was saying to the Slaughterhouse side of things that he wanted to stay with the numbers and was being very vague about that. And that kind of talk can lead to a little bit of dissension in your groups. Kyland already wasn't really in a great spot in the Slaughterhouse. And the fact that he had this opportunity to create this new majority alliance with the Tiffany, Azza, basically the Kings and the Queens side of things, with Derek as their ace in the hole, was an interesting idea, and definitely something Kyland could have solidified in that first night. But ultimately, Kyland took the approach of don't really play the game, wait until the wild cards played out, and see what happens. Because as we saw last week, Frenchie told the entire house that he wanted to go after Christian. Next thing you know, Christian's safe and can no longer be on the block. Everybody kind of knows that Frenchie targeted Christian, even to maybe a certain extent Christian. Not quite sure on that. So I thought it was a pretty okay approach by Kyland. I thought it was fine. There's no reason to overextend yourself in once you first win that HOH. And plus, giving the house something to fear is, to me, always a little bit fun. So what then proceeds to happen is that Kyland holds open meetings with a lot of the house. He starts talking to different housemates. Derek X brings up a lot of things to Kyland, I believe, near the end. And Tiffany, Claire, and Sarah Beth are definitely trying to push Kyland to nominate Frenchie. And the Frenchie side of things are definitely pushing to nominate somebody like Derek X and maybe a Brittany. Ultimately, it kind of comes down to where the wild card competition was to happen. And so the wild card competition does get played. People are picked for it. And Sarah Beth is the winner of the wild card competition. Now, what was really interesting about this is that Sarah wasn't given the wheel to spin around, but instead she was given the opportunity to switch teams with somebody, so that the only way that Sarah could get safety was if she switched teams with either Tiffany or Claire. And since Tiffany and Claire are really working closely with Sarah Beth, she opted out to take that opportunity. And also the fact Sarah Beth is really close to Kyland. By doing this, it's interesting because it really does show that Sarah Beth and Kyland are pretty close, and Sarah Beth has a lot of faith in Kyland not putting her on the block to not take this deal. But ultimately, I think it was a better idea. The only thing you're risking, the bigger thing that you're risking by either taking Tiffany and Claire and taking their safety for the week, is you're risking them being really pissed off at you and falling a little bit down in the pecking order of whatever alliance that you need to create in order to create a counter alliance to the slaughterhouse. So I'm actually pretty high on this decision by Sarah Beth, and I do believe Sarah Beth is playing a really interesting game. She earlier in this week was talking to Derek X and was was a little bit worried about him. A lot of people were telling Sarah Beth that Derek X was saying her name, and she kind of participated in actively targeting Derek X at certain points of the week. But as she and Derek X have gotten closer, there's this really beautiful and really cute clip of Sarah Beth and Derek X talking, and Sarah like apologizing to Derek, saying that, you know, as she's got to know him throughout this week, that she realizes he's a really nice guy, and that she felt that because he was kind of ostracized, that she kind of took part in that. And it was just really sweet. She basically was like, look, I didn't mean to bully you or anything like that, because, you know, I was bullied as a kid. And it was just a really great connecting moment between Derek X and Sarah Beth. She still would go on to, you know, badmouth Derek X to certain people like Christian and Alyssa, because she is playing a game for $7,500,000. But it does seem to me that that coalition of Sarah Beth, Derek X, Kyland, Tiffany, and Claire is definitely going to solidify as this week goes on, especially because of the fact that nominations were also that day. And Kyland decided that he was going to nominate Frenchie and Brittany. And the reason being for Brittany is because Brittany is the only person in the house that isn't really connected in any alliance. She has a little bit of a thing going on with the girls, and she's kind of being blamed for creating these girls' alliances, which is a little bit ridiculous. But she's definitely the most disconnected of the entire group, which goes to show that you should play Big Brother pretty hard when you get in there. If anything, I think after the first week, you should at least be in 3 alliances if you can. The first alliance that you need to be in is you need to be in the majority alliance. Second alliance is you need a sub-majority alliance, like the alliance within the alliance. That's the actual core of the alliance. And then thirdly, you need to be in a counter alliance just in case. If you're in one of the 2 of these 3, you're doing a pretty good job as a Big Brother player. If you're in 2 of the 3, you're doing a great job. And if you're somehow in all 3, you're a potential GOAT player. And so far, I think the person that's doing the best with this is probably Tiffany, because Tiffany and Frenchie have a really good connection. And definitely she's the most protected in the slaughterhouse that is not technically a part of the slaughterhouse. she has her own kind of coalition against Frenchie and starting to form a majority alliance against Frenchie. But she also has the cookout, and of course Tiffany is the grill master in that, and that could be a really big thing for Tiffany going forward. And so we'll see how she continues to do. We'll see how Kyland does this week as he kind of wields this power. He should be able to do what Frenchie was unable to do his first week and really coalesce all these different alliances for himself and set his game up to be really successful and have a really deep run. We'll continue to look at Derek X. He still seems like he's only really in the Tiffany side of things, but as he's growing as a player. Tiffany is really taking Derek X under her wing and really kind of teaching Derek X the game, and that's a really interesting dynamic that continues to grow, and we'll see what Derek X is able to do with that. And overall, again, this season has just been really fun to cover. I'm really glad that I get this opportunity just to talk my thoughts out and put them on the internet. And I hope that you're having a good time watching me. If you'd like, comment, and subscribe, it would just mean the world to me. And if you want to help out the channel by joining my Patreon, that would be really great. Otherwise, I hope that you have a great and wonderful day, and I will see you later. All right, bye.